Hello people, this is Spellbinder with this article. It's very amazing. I believe Alex Jones today on his Sunday show had an emergency broadcast. I guess he spent some time on this. It says globalists plan to dismantle middle class with UN tax. Paul Joseph Watson, Infowars.com, Sunday, September 19, 2010. Says globalists representing 60 nations will meet at the UN this coming week and push a tax on the financial transaction in the name of solving poverty and climate change, formally launching a massive program to bankrupt the middle class and enrich the coffers of global government. Well, they're just not even gonna I'm just going to go through with this no matter what. They're just going to keep changing names and make it happen. We're going to be taxed by the UN no matter if we want it or not. Spearheaded by the European Union countries, the so-called innovating financial proposal invests a tax of 0.005%, that's 5 cents per $1,000, which experts estimate could produce more than $30 billion a year worldwide for priority causes, reports CNS News, and you can check that out. As Ira Stowe, editor of FutureCapitalism.com, points out, new taxes always start off small so as to not be resisted by the people forced to pay them, and are then always gradually increased. It's a well-known fact. When people suggest taxes, they always start out small, said Stowe. But once the doors open to the ideal of global taxes, you can bet they won't end small. Never mind all the issues about whether development aid actually helps poor countries or just winds up empowering corrupt local dictators and their cronies. The call for global transaction tax arrives in the aftermath of a leaked UN blueprint which outlined how elitists plan to rebrand global warming in an effort to dismantle the middle class by instituting a global redistribution of wealth via the carbon tax. They just won't let that go. They're going to tell you that breathing is bad for you, no matter what you tell them. They're not listening. They're evil, control freak creatures. The aim is to limit and redirect the aspirations for a better life of rising middle classes around the world. In other words, to reduce the standard of living for the middle class in Western Europe and America. However, as was uncovered during the Copenhagen Summit, the program of global redistribution of wealth and the transaction taxes largely centers around the looting of the wealth of the middle class in richer countries and then using that money to bankroll the construction of world government, as the leaked Danish text reveals. You can check that out. The money generated from consumption taxes will go directly to the World Bank, not to developing countries to lower carbon emissions or alleviate poverty. No, that's not this is to rob the human race. Under the terms of this proposal, poor countries will not simply be handed the money pillaged from richer nations. Instead, they will be forced to accept green loans in the name of combating climate change, a policy that would land the already financially devastated Third World with even more debt payable to globalist institutions such as the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, a very evil organization. Even if you accept that global institutions, who have proven to be completely corrupt time and time again, should be empowered to steal from the rich and give to the poor, these proposals don't even do that. This is all about bankrolling the expansion of world government and creating a giant slush fund that will be used to coerce small countries into allowing themselves to be ruled and regulated by a global bureaucracy funded by increasingly destituted taxpayers in the West. We warned that globalists were embarking on global financial transaction tax back in December when Lord Monckton obtained the draft proposed for the Copenhagen summit. As Monckton revealed at the time, an end game is to tax the American economy to the extent of 2% GDP, to impose a further tax of 2% on every financial transaction, and to close down effectively the economies of the West, transfer your jobs to third world countries. The tax, which was vehemently supported by President Obama in Copenhagen, will cost American families already laboring under the greatest financial collapse for generations at least $3,000 a year just for starters. They're going to kill us all. I can tell it now. There can no longer be any denial that the world government is preparing to plunder the West, enforcing the myriad of different global consumption taxes, from financial levies to carbon tax, which will do absolutely nothing to address the real environmental issues and will be used solely to expand the power of the World Bank and the IMF and the United Nations. Allied to the global tax assault is the newly published IMF strategy document that calls for the implementation of a global currency called the banker, which will be pushed through by means of draconian regulatory measures that eviscerate sovereignty rights of a nation states and hands complete economic control of the global economy over to a tiny despotic ruling elite. The banker will hand the IMF the power to manipulate exchange rate and determine the eventual collapse of the dollar. Massive resistance must be focused around rejecting this institution of global taxes paid to the United Nations and the formation of a global currency. Otherwise, the last tattered shreds of American sovereignty will be flushed down the toilet for good. Alex Jones contributed to this article. And Paul Joseph Watson is the editor and writer for PrisonPlanet.com. He is the author of Order Out of Chaos. Watson is also a fill-in host for Alex Jones' show. Watson has been interviewed by many publications and radio shows, including Vanity Fair and Coast to Coast AM, America's most listened to late-night talk radio. There it is. Now you've heard it. They're going to rob us blind. And we're going to let them get away with it because people aren't going to realize what they're up to until it's too late. When you start seeing 2% become 4% to 8% to 16%, you'll start to get the word of what's going to happen here in the next few years, how fast this is going to multiply. Well, that's all I got for now. This is another story about the control freak elitists who are psychopaths. I mean, they want to control and dominate and manipulate people physically, mentally, and financially, and take the wealth from you and stick it in their pockets. That's what it's all about. It's not going to do nothing for the poor. It's redistribution of wealth, but not to the poor, as the progressive socialists think, or even the moderate socialists. No, you're going to be robbed too. It's going straight to these great bankers, the people who own everything. These are your masters. It's going to get this. As George Carlin says, you're not in their club. You're not going to get nothing except robbed and abused and used. Well, until next time, this is Spellbinder with this very upsetting news report from the UN leaked document. Till next time, be good. Be good at it for a reason, and good day.